Hey, it's Mike Brennan, and we're back with a new show, Michigan Marijuana Today, and we try to, be as current as we can on the news. And we don't get much more current than today. My new co-host, Dave Crabill from iHemp, and also he has a marketing company, but and a self-confessed, what was it, domain junkie? I think it was.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
true. Yeah.
he's working on that. He's in Domain Junkies Anonymous, but he'll pass through it. But anyway, so he was at the Senate. What was it again?
Senate Regulatory Affairs Committee.
Ah, and what we were talking about, what, hemp, cannabis, or both?
Hemp in particular, the Senator Lauwers proposed this committee, and it was kind of funny because what he was undoing what he did back 2020. So Senator Lauwers is a Michigan state senator who wrote the bills that defined uh, our hemp program for the state of Michigan. So he set that up, through his lawmaking. And today we undid it all in theory. This was Blain and I both testified. There's two bills, 608 and 609, and it's just some procedural things. I mean, nothing in Lansing moves fast. So this is one of many steps. So if all goes well, we will be able to grow in 2027 under the USDA program. So that
Okay.
is the hope, because and here's the big thing: those in the cannabis world, think we're crazy to be upset about a $1,250 fee to grow hemp, but we're still figuring this thing out, and we have a lot of farmers that would be interested in maybe growing a quarter acre or something like that. They'll test plot and see what it does, see how long deep the tap roots grow, how it affects the soil, because it can do a lot of things, on your farm, and you can grow that fiber in the grain, and nothing to do with cannabinoids. But we're under all that same bucket, with marijuana in essence, because of the compliance for the THC. And and that's the big battle coming in November with the farm bill. But so anyhow, today Blaine and I both testified. Senator Lauwers has these bills up, and so some of the senators were gleefully um, saying, "Oh yeah, any other bills you want to get rid of?" It was kind of funny, but and one senator did have a good question for me, and I was able to tell my frisbee story, and that was Senator Sy, Singh. He had a relevant question because he says, because I'd mentioned something about banking being a problem, because even though the Federal Reserve has issued two letters saying it's okay to bank hemp, they still don't. They want it's a special CBD program for any kind of hemp, anything to do with hemp. That's why when I went to Huntington Bank, I tried to get to a big boy bank instead of my farmer's bank that's been working with us. But they wanted to know how much THC was in the was in the frisbee, plastic frisbee, in order for me to sell it. Which I could have done, but I didn't. It's just silly. But but one of the Senator McCann, his question was, "So Dave, those hemp frisbees, do they fly higher?" It's like,
Oh,
haha. But that's what we're fighting, that same mentality. Everything's a joke and everything's a stoner thing. They don't see,
do they see the $3 billion? Have they thought about that or not?
well, and that's why in this letter, one of our buddies, I think you've probably met him, Bo Whitney out of Oregon, but at
Yeah.
Whitney Economics.
Uh-huh.
um, he I'm looking over here because I included this in my letter to the senators because I wanted them to think about this. Is that Whitney Economics has warned that regulatory uncertainty has already reduced the 2030 forecast for U.S. hemp grain and fiber acreage from 5.5 million acres to 1 million acres, representing 3.1 billion in reduced projected revenue for American farmers. I think that's a big deal. And Michigan should not be on the sidelines. And this step, getting it out of MDARD, where they wanted us to fund their program, which I understand, but we don't need them. We don't need a MDARD program. And then I asked Molly Mott, who was there. Molly does not like it when I bring up my concerns with the fees and such, but Molly is supportive of this. I think she just wants me to go away. But I asked her, well, are you guys still going to be responsible for the testing? Because there's been some issues with the testing, not being friendly in the way, because it's supposed to be, and they had it all laid out. When you have a 5-acre plot of hemp, you're supposed to do a pattern around the field. And what's been reported to me is they just go and take the biggest tops and go. It's like, that's not fair. That's not right. So there's going to be a program. And according to Molly, there's certification, and someone can get certified, and you'll be the tester for the USDA. So I'm going to look into that. Yeah, we might be a good little side gig for us. Be a hemp tester. We're already cannabis testers. Why not be a hemp tester too?
So getting back to your hearing, so what about the big issue is that the minuscule amount of THC in hemp, but everybody's hung up on that. And so are they going to separate like building materials and all that stuff that's non-human consumptible from the two? Are they going to divide it like that or what?
Yeah, see, this is the world that I see coming in the future, right? I got my crystal ball right here in front of me.
Okay.
The program goes to the USDA. The
Yeah.
USDA regulates the growing of hemp. Okay.
Right.
Um, Everything needs tested until we get to the point where we're like Canada, where there's certain varieties where they don't even test anymore because it's a fiber variety or it's a grain variety. It doesn't produce a lot of THC, and they don't even bother testing it anymore. That's where we want to be. But uh, we've spoken with I don't know if it was Brian we had on, Brian Hanna, or one
Yeah,
of
he's
those,
the CRA director, Brian Hanna. Yeah.
but I don't know if it was Brian. And might have been one of his other people. But basically, um, they don't care about fiber and grain. They're concerned about cannabinoids. So if you're growing for CBD and cannabinoid production, then you're going to fall into that processor handler licensing $1,350 lane, and you'll be under their purview. But the guy's growing to make hempcrete, hemp lime, which is in the U.S. building code now for residential insulation. They can, you can get a 3-acre plot of hemp fiber and build a house, and not have to worry about the CRA breathing down your neck and saying, "Oh, all your work this year's got to be destroyed because somebody might get high." If you, I don't know, if you get a telephone pole full of it, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what Rand Paul once said at a hearing that you'd have
Right?
to smoke a telephone pole worth of hemp to get high. So, but I
Yeah,
do. The CBDs is a big concern for a lot of folks. For instance, I take them to help me sleep at night, and I'm sure
yeah,
a lot of other folks do too. And then there's other things. I mean, that relaxes you. It's supposed to be good for PTSD and things like that.
yeah.
What's going to happen with that now? Is that the November 12th deadline and it goes away, or what?
Well, it's if everything stays the way it is right now, you'll only be able to deal with an isolate. So any growers for CBD will only have a path to take it down to a white powder and put that in their products. Pure CBD. You can't have any. The amount of THC that they're going to allow per package or per container is too small,
Mm,
to do anything else. So it's ridiculous, which is sad, because The reality is that you, even with CBD salves and such, that little bit of THC has a an entourage effect, and it's more effective. It works better. So the full spectrum is really the better choice. But we have this concern over the THC. So the dispensaries could produce CBD products because they already are regulated and allowed to produce THC, but they don't care about CBD really. I mean, you walk into a dispensary, all they care about is, look, I've got this infused thing that's 50% THC. It's like, I don't want to. I don't want that garbage. But their mindset is, I don't know. It's different than mine. I was excited when I saw, that we are going to get dispensaries and such, and there's going to be bud tenders, and I thought, oh, they're going to be able to explain different terpenes and the difference between the sativas and the indicas, and provide the benefits for this. And maybe that's available if you go to a true medical dispensary. Or I know if you go to a caregiver, many of the caregivers are quite knowledgeable, but the typical, yeah, I shouldn't say it this way, but the bud tenders that I've run across and the few times I've gone into a dispensary, if you ask them about, hey, do you have any CBN products to help me sleep? It's like, no, never heard of that. So, you know, which is understandable. We just don't have that education in place. We're still learning all this stuff. So,
I think it depends on the dispensary. The one that I use, they got a whole rack of CBNs,
oh,
So,
did they?
oh yeah, yeah, the one right around the corner from me. I
Oh,
won't give
just
it a
the
free
north side of
appetite.
town there?
Yeah, down by Packard, that area, that Fraser's.
Okay,
There's one kind of kitty corner from there. Okay, I'll give them a plug, Arbor Side. So, but for me,
there you
it's
go.
just right around the corner, half a mile, So,
Good job, Arborside,
yeah,
because that's what we need. We need, informed and educated bud tenders, to really help people, find
right.
what works for them.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's all I do is right at the front desk. I say, "Well, I'm looking for some CBNs." They go, "Hey, we got a whole bunch. Let me show you." And
Oh,
so they walk you through it. And what do you want to do? How strong do you want it to be? And boy, that stuff is loaded. Can't take a whole one of those. You have to cut it like in four pieces because it's like, well, 50 milligrams of THC and 50 milligrams of CBN. So you got to whack that down. It's a little
hmm,
bit beyond my dosage level. But anyway,
wow.
we digress. So, but yeah, what else is going? Well, let's just keep the show on the hemp world. So that's obviously the main one. But just to educate for people that may not be aware on the November 12th deadline, why don't you talk a little bit about that so that they know what headwinds you may be facing?
Yeah, that's the Mary Miller Amendment, and that was Mary Miller is. Well, I don't have that in my system yet. Um, I don't have the specifics for you, Mike. I'm gonna mess it up, but I can pull it up real quick with my little AI buddy.
Well, a lot of the heat is not coming from the Congress so much as it is from, well, even the hemp community doesn't like the Delta 8s and Delta 9s and all that jazz that are sold in gas stations and, you name it, they sell it, smoke shops.
Well, yeah, and that was really the impetus for all this. Yeah, I think I've shared this story with you before. When I grew an acre in 2019, I had 11 liters of CBD distillate. Sold the first one for $4,000, and within a year, the liter was worth $350 instead. So the market crashed, and a lot of people were sitting on inventory. They had a lot of CBD distillate, CBD oil on hand, and they were trying to figure out what to do with this. And so some brainiac figured out some scientific conversion. Hey, we can convert this into uh, delta 8 THC, and it'll get you high. Some people initially they said, "Oh, it doesn't really get you high," but people were buying it because they got a little buzz off it. So this Mary Miller amendment, it was kind of a reaction to that because of these, and that's where these conversions were causing friction between the cannabis world and the hemp world too, because the cannabis world, I mean, they're spending tens of
Big
thousands of
money. Yeah,
dollars for
lots of
licenses.
money. Yeah.
And here comes a hemp guy. Oh, I paid under $5,000 and but I have this cheap product I'm selling, and they were selling them online all over the nation. I went crazy. The DEA even came up and said, "Hey, we're not going to regulate Delta 8." It's like, game on, man.
There you
They were selling
go.
it like crazy.
Yeah.
So it got convoluted. When Blain and I first started at Hemp, Michigan, our shtick always was hemp is not an intoxicant. The CBD is psychoactive because it, removes anxiety and has these other benefits, but it's not getting you high. Well, here comes Delta 8, and it changed the whole equation.
Yeah, I've
So
never tried that stuff, so I can't speak to how effective it is.
I've tried it, and I've talked to other people that have had some really bad experiences with it. Basically, I've stayed away from it. And one of the main reasons is people were using you have to use like a caustic acid, like muriatic acid, to do
Hmm.
the conversion. And I don't know about you, but I don't. Have you ever messed with muriatic acid?
No.
I've done it, to etch like metal and stuff. And that stuff is nasty. You have to. Oh. So
And so
that
people are
Delta
putting that
8,
in their bodies then, huh?
yeah. Well, in theory, all that goes away in the final product, right? Depends on how well somebody did it. Delta 8, Delta 10, THCO, and HHC are all converted cannabinoids. So this is going to be banned by the Mary Miller Amendment. Personally, I don't have a problem with that. What what the problem
It's a
is
little
in
broad, right? It also takes the CBDs that I use to sleep will go away too, right? Or not?
yeah. Um, oh, and it changed the THC test from Delta 9 THC to total THC. So well, that's another way these guys, and I'm going to make some people mad when I say they were cheating, but so they're taking advantage of a loophole. Okay, that's not cheating, right? So they're selling. You ever heard of THCA?
No, that's a new one.
So that's the precursor acid. So when have you heard the term de I'm going to mess this up. Decarboxyl. I can't pronounce it, but when you heat up your flour, you're familiar with when you burn cannabis?
Yeah, I have some familiarity with that.
All
Yeah.
right. So that causes this chemical reaction, and it converts the THCA into THC. Okay, so this THC is like before it's decarboxy. I can't say that word.
Spell it.
Uh,
Can you spell it?
to decarb is the short term. To
Well, let's just go with decarb. That
we'll
works.
go
Okay.
with decarb.
Yeah, yeah, that's easy. Okay.
Shows how dumb I am. I can't even say this word. But so anyhow, they were selling this THCA product and shipping it all over. It's just flour, um, but it's it's not. It's like and I don't know it well enough to explain it,
Is
but
it like liquid or is it solid? What is it? I don't.
it's flour. It's the
It is
same
flour.
flour,
Okay.
but it hasn't. Yeah, I don't know if it's a plant state uh, or so. So the Farm Bill focused on Delta 9 THC under 0.3%. Miller's amendment would use total THC, including THCA, because the conversion always was if you get your flower tested and you get what's called a COA, a certificate of analysis, and the way they do the math it's the delta 9 THC plus 0.87% of the THCA, and that's your total THC. And so anyhow, they're messing with some of that to get rid of this THCA product that is being shipped all over because it's, you know, basically they're selling weed in the states where they don't have legal weed, and they're calling it THCA. Um,
Hmm.
so that's going to get rid of that THCA flower. I mean, just legalize the plant already. You know, quit messing with all these loopholes and stuff. It's just crazy. But
Yeah, well,
I don't
just
see it in here. But
even
there's
hemp is, of course, the non-THC, well, a little bit of THC, cannabis. But even in the cannabis world, every survey I see shows two-thirds of Americans say, "Hey, why not? Let's legalize it." I
mm,
mean, it's illegal in 26 states, but and then there's medical marijuana still in all but three or four, I guess. Indiana being one. They don't do no drugs in Indiana. So, um,
mm,
but yeah, it's an interesting kind of thing that's going on here. But they should just leave it alone. I mean, everybody,
yeah,
all the surveys say, and what are these? I mean, don't get me started on politicians. Um, but
mhm,
that's what they're supposed. That point is, it's representative democracy. It's not, hey, who paid me off or who donated to my campaign politics. We are the ones they're supposed to be working for, not big
yeah,
pharma, which I suspect is behind much of this. Um,
mhm,
so yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a pretty screwed up time right now. So, but
yeah,
and then this is just an example of that. It's just this people that it's more of a maybe a ultra conservative type people that are the ones making the most noise. And I'm not trying. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or whatever. And but and a lot of these people don't really know what they're talking about. I mean, I only know hemp because you and I did a hemp show for years and years, and I mean, previous to that, I knew nothing about hemp. So I mean, and they got to have the same credentials to be able to decide what to do with it. I'm not saying they got to, study it for 4 years, but they at least got to know what they're talking about, and that
yeah.
seems to be one big issue.
Well, and we have some people that are spending some time in Washington and doing some lobby work, but I just heard a short video earlier today. There's over 1,100 big pharma lobbyists, and they've spent I forget the number, but it was an emotional amount of money
Probably
they spent
more
in
in the
Washington.
billions, probably.
Yeah,
So.
and we're trying to string this together, and make it happen.
Does the
You know,
National Hemp Organization have a couple lobbyists or not? They gotta have, right?
well, our probably our the U.S. Hemp Roundtable is led by Jonathan Miller. He's an attorney out of Kentucky, and he's active in Washington. And they have a lobbyist firm that they work with. I can't recall their name right now, but there is a lobbyist, but I mean, that's one lobbyist company, and
Versus
you know,
what did you say? 1,200 pharmaceutical lobbyists.
yeah, and I know the NIH there are a couple other hemp associations. I'm gonna have to brush up on some of this and NIH, but I've met them, and they're spending time in Washington. I don't know if they're really be considered lobbyists, advocates certainly, and that's one of the things that scared me when we hired. Remember Brad Werfel that was
Remember the
helping us
name,
out?
yeah. Hmm.
A PR guy. He did a lot of work with MDAR. I'm sure he still does. Great guy, really a godsend to us. If I wish we could have continued to be able to afford him, but and it wasn't that much in relative terms. It's just that we don't have any money, um, and but he advised us, and then he kind of scared me too, though, because he said, "Well, if you start lobbying, on your actions, and you have to do all this paperwork, and I hate paperwork, so it's like, oh, I don't want to lobby, but I don't know. It's what's the difference between advocacy and lobbying? I'm still, this is the
I
first
think
time
it's
I've
the
been in
level
Lansing
of the
in a while.
spend. I think the lobbyists wine you and dine you, to say the least. So I think the
Yeah,
advocates are less so of that, but I could be wrong.
yeah, but we're good. In the cannabis industry, we have Robin Snyder, doing great work. The Michigan Manufacturers Association, right?
Yeah,
And um,
Michigan
Ja
Cannabis Association. Yeah,
oh yeah,
I thought you said manufacturers.
isn't
They do
manufacturing?
manufacture something, but it's not
What's
necessarily
the name of her association? Because I thought manufacturing
Michigan
was a.
Cannabis. No, MICIA, Michigan Cannabis Industry Association.
Oh, okay, is that okay? All right. So, and then
And she's
Jamie
a
Law.
former caregiver too. She came out of the caregiver world.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Jamie Lowell. I mean, there's a lot of good advocates in the cannabis space, and some of them are pretty well funded.
I
But
don't know about Jamie Law, but he might be more than I think. But he's one of he's of course real good friends with Rick Thompson, who used to be on my show on Michigan.
mhm.
We did something called 420 Post Live, and Rick was the co-host on that show. So, but Jamie and him, right? Jamie and Rick were one of the folks that helped write all the laws that we currently have with the medical marijuana back in what 2010, 29, something like that. And then the recreational cannabis, which went legal in December 2019, but got approved. It was at the 2018 election. It was
Mhm.
voted in, I think it was. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because it's 2019 when it became law.
Yeah,
So
right. So yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, they'd be great lobbyists.
yeah,
But
but
you gotta Washington. I mean, if you don't have a couple $1 million, why go, right? Because you're
mhm.
competing with ginormous companies with more money than you can imagine. So
Yeah, and now the beverage industries are stepping into the space, so they're the ones that are gonna have the dollars, and they're
yeah,
gonna set the tone.
in the end, money talks, and you know what? So I won't finish the rest of that, but yeah, definitely. The beverage industry is now tipping their drinks with THC, and I think they would go away on November 20th, or excuse me, 12th too, wouldn't they? THC laced drinks, if I recall.
That's a fair question. I don't know. One thing I noticed in my perusing of my daily brief that I have coming up now, and it's not in today's brief, was Connecticut. I got to look into that. Connecticut seemed to have a pretty good law regarding that, where they had two paths where the dispensaries can sell a 10 milligram, up to a 10 milligram drink, with I think is plenty, and like a CBD shop could sell like a 5 milligram beverage. But that beverage, and I see where did you see where Target, there's certain states where Target and I don't know if it was Walmart, there were some major retailers picking up some hemp beverages.
Yeah, I remember writing that story too, but I can't remember which companies they were. But see, that's what's going to happen is they're going to go to Congress and say this is not going to work for us. We just are developing this market. We think it's going to be huge. We don't want it to go away, and then
Well,
negotiations will transpire. Hopefully.
and what we're seeing happen and what's really pushing this is alcohol sales down.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
so we're going to see the liver doctors are going to lobby against this.
yeah. They'll be
Not going to
against it.
help their
Yeah,
business
yeah,
at all.
for sure. So.
What about all these dialysis places? Yeah, what are they
Yeah,
going to
what
do?
are they gonna do?
Huh? Sheesh.
Well, but I think the beverage and beer industry has a tad more money. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
So
I think they're even throwing THC in beer. That would be like drinking a Boilermaker, or something like that. Um,
yeah,
I'm not opposed to that. It would be pretty stiff. So, but
I
a lot of
had
people
a
don't want to smoke. As I've gotten, I probably shouldn't confess too much here, but as I've gotten older, I don't like to smoke as much as I did as a younger man. I'm more of a gummy, edible kind of guy now. Occasionally,
mm,
I smoke, but it's not
yeah.
something I do much. I'm a biker and things like that, and it wouldn't be good for biking. I wouldn't have any wind. So, but
Well,
yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll shape up this year. And again, it comes back to money. I mean, the Benjamins are there, and all right,
yeah, it's going to be interesting. Things are changing. Maybe it'll speed up. Maybe Trump will get us to Schedule 3 and we'll have banking the way we want it. I mean, those are things that need to happen for both cannabis and hemp.
absolutely. And I think we'll end on that note, Dave.